My aunt stole my fiancé for her daughter, but now everyone is crying because I took their trust fund and they realized my ex was a bum. I, 28, was engaged to Ron, 27, for a year. We met in college. We were friends, but not very close. We started dating after college and have been together for 4 years. Last year, we got engaged. We held a small ceremony with family and close friends. My aunt was also invited. Since she attended my engagement, my aunt was impressed by my ex's charm. She kept praising how handsome and rich he was. It was unusual because she had never been so affectionate with me. Her daughter, Lucia, 24, is extremely beautiful, but dumb as a rock. My aunt always compared us in every way. I was good at studying, even though she was 4 years younger than me in school. My aunt would compare our grades and comment on how her daughter was better than me. The funny part was when she compared her 8th grade report card with my 12th grade report card and declared that she was better than me. The joke is that Lucia couldn't pass high school. Ron and I were planning our wedding in October because I had to visit the UK for a summer program. Everything was going well between us when I left in June. We spoke once a day because of the time difference. 2 weeks after we started drifting apart. I asked him what was wrong. He didn't say anything straight, just said he was stressed about work. I thought the distance had affected our feelings. I didn't take it seriously because it wasn't a new relationship. I thought about resolving the issue after I returned. A week before my program ended, he stopped talking to me. I felt so childish. I wanted to resolve it, but he took the easy way out and disappeared. I've always had a lot of pride, and even though it hurts, I don't chase anyone. I continued in my dream world, thinking he would come looking for me. He didn't. Instead, after a while, my aunt showed up at my house with an invitation to his wedding. It found out he was marrying my cousin Lucia. What the hell? In the age of emails, he shows up with a printed copy of the invitation. He wanted to see my disappointment in person. It was one of the few moments I felt completely bewildered. I was in shock, wondering how. How could he fall in love with my cousin who can barely afford her meals? But my aunt soon gave me the answer. She said, "I'm so sorry, honey. I understand your pain, but what can we do when people fall out of love? Maybe he couldn't handle the distance." Don't be mad at your cousin. Ron was the one who looked for Lucia for coffee because he had nothing else to do after work. You know how beautiful my princess is. You can't blame Ron for falling in love with her. I looked at her with red, tearful eyes. Normally, I can't stand my aunt and interrupt her, but this time I was so shaken up that I couldn't say a word. I just looked at her and accepted her cruel, sugar-coated insults. She said, "Believe me, darling, I love you as much as I love Lucia." I yelled at him when he told me about Ron, but he came down to my house and politely confessed his deep love for Lucia. You know how humble and sweet he is. My heart melted instantly when he knelt and begged Lucia's hand in marriage like an old-school gentleman. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I imagined Ron doing everything she described. She tried to hug me, but I blocked her. I wiped my tears and composed myself, saying I had something to attend to and that she should please leave. She told me, "If you're thinking about contacting Ron, don't. He blocked you." I asked him to. "It's not right for my son-in-law to be in contact with his ex." I told him, "Screw you and your son-in-law. I have too much to do in life than go hunting for other people's men." He stood up and said, "Don't be discouraged. My love, I understand it will be difficult for you to find another man at your age and with this appearance. But don't worry. There are many divorced men looking for a second love in life. I'm sure you'll find a man that good." I yelled at him, "Get out!" I deeply regretted losing my temper and giving him the satisfaction of seeing my vulnerability. But it's okay. We all have weak moments in life when we simply can't stand our ground. This news was much more painful than the ghosting. I'm not saying it would have been easy if he'd cheated on me with any other woman, but it would have been much better than this. I would have cut him off and made sure I'd never see him again. But now, who knows? My aunt could show up at any moment to shove her daughter's prize in my face. All my friends and family knew about Ron and me. Now I feel stupid for having such a pompous engagement now that he's marrying Lucia. The story is obvious to everyone about what's been going on in the background. My aunt has been weaving a different story that Ron found solace in Lucia because I was too stubborn and self-centered and prioritized my new career over him. She told everyone that Ron didn't want me to go to the summer program in the UK, and yet I went and stopped talking to him. She even went so far as to say that Ron suspected I was in cahoots with someone in the UK, that he heard some guy's voice in the background every time he called me, and things like that. I've never been in touch with most of my relatives since I moved away from home. Even as a teenager, I was distant from them because I didn't like their small talk. So it was easier for my aunt to sell her lies. Ah, it feels so terrible. I know this is all for the best in the end. I got rid of the cheater. There is light at the end of the tunnel. But you know what? When you're in the middle of the dark phase, it's simply impossible to navigate through it, even if you know everything will be okay in a while. Update 1. Hi, and thanks for the encouragement on my original post. I've been thinking about updating this for a long time. I thought, the day I no longer feel anything for my ex, I'll do an update. And here we are today. Things actually got better, and there's a cherry on top. Wait for it. That phase was really dark and long. Not that I haven't been through a breakup before, but this one was awful because he was my fiancé. My mom stopped by for a week, and it helped to have her by my side. However, I felt sick the moment he left. I was with Ron for so many years that every place brought back memories of him, reason enough to leave the city. I applied for jobs in the UK and got a very promising one in Leeds. Nothing like that. I packed my bags and left. Pro tip. For me, if someone is struggling to move on after a difficult past, nothing heals better and faster than a change of scenery. Yes, only if your situation allows it. I understand that not everyone has the opportunity to move on so easily. Anyway, moving to Leeds made me feel reborn. I was surprised at how quickly I managed to get over it. It took a turn for the better a few days ago when my mom called and asked if Ron was unemployed. I told her yes, he was. I mean, not unemployed, but he quit his job a year ago to pursue his passion for writing. Oh, something interesting. Ron wanted to be a writer and wrote here and there, but wasn't making much progress with his full-time job. So I decided to help him build a career around writing. We had an agreement that I would work full-time while he laid the groundwork for his venture, and eventually I would quit my job so we could both work on our own business. Yes, but it messed her up. My mom laughed so hard when I told her these details. She said my aunt came to see her the other day and yelled, "Why didn't you tell me Ron was lazy?" My mom was confused because as far as she knew, he was working and doing pretty well financially. My mom said she had no idea about this. My aunt told Mom that Ron insisted Lucia take an accelerated course that would get her a better paying job so she could support the household expenses for both of them. He wanted to execute that plan with Lucia. What I didn't know was that my aunt married him to Lucia so they could both live off her income. Well, they played jokes on each other. Last I heard, Lucia was working part-time as a hostess at a restaurant, making table reservations. I'm not sure they could both live off a hostess's income. It might sound disdainful to look down on Lucia's profession. Well, maybe it is. Maybe I don't care. I would love to see the disappointment and anguish on my aunt's face when the truth about Ron comes out. There's another layer to this. My aunt was Lucia's father's lover, and when he died, his legal wife kicked them out of the house. That's why my aunt lived with my grandparents. They were living off my grandparents' pension, and sometimes my dad and uncle helped them financially. Lucia has always been a silly girl. She doesn't like to work, nor is she capable of it. She failed high school twice and eventually dropped out. That hostessing job she got was also thanks to my uncle. He commended her at a friend's restaurant. Nowadays, even a hostessing job requires a high school diploma. If you think poetic justice has been served, it hasn't yet. After I finished complaining, it was time to act. He was still at work. Together, we bought a trust fund that we were going to use later for our business. He had full access to that trust fund because he managed our finances. He was putting money into it every month. I'd say 20% of the money in that trust fund was his. I liquidated that entire fund when I found out about his infidelity. He has no idea the fund no longer exists. He's still delusional, thinking he'll get the money from it because he told Lucia that once my anger subsided, he would contact me and get his 50% of the trust fund. Deluded. If you think I'm a scammer, I'm not, because I spent an equivalent amount of money on Ron during his bad days. After Ron quit his full-time job, he had a hard time getting writing jobs. It was difficult for him to make ends meet. So I gave him access to one of my spare bank accounts where I was saving some money for his monthly expenses. I supported him with all my means. I think what I did was fair. If we had been married, he would have received alimony. This trust fund was the closest thing because we were almost married. Now, I wonder about his future entrepreneurial plans. He has no savings and no job. That's no longer my problem. Update 2. Here's the next update. This Christmas has been lovely. I had the satisfaction of seeing the disappointment on my ex's face. I returned to my mother's house and he came knocking on my door. He was here asking for the money from his trust fund, and on top of that, he was demanding 50% of it. I said, "What money?" He said he had saved money in the trust fund that we were going to use for our business. I said, "Oh, that trust fund, I liquidated it." He went crazy. How could you do that? We had saved that money for our business. Now what are we going to do? I said, "Let me, there's no us here." You're my cousin's husband, and the person you should be calling us is across the street. He took a deep breath and said, Look, I know I hurt you, and you have every right to be mad at me, but I need that money from the trust fund. I don't have a job. The client I was writing for dumped me. I'm looking for another client. Lucia doesn't make enough for both of us. I haven't paid my rent for the last 2 months, and if I'm one more month late, my landlord threatened to kick me out. Please understand my situation. Why the hell should your cheating ass understand? Remember what you did to me, I screamed. Deception doesn't give you the right to take my money, he said. Your money? You only own 20% of the trust fund, I told him. Be that as it may, I want it back, he said. Remember the money I gave you for your monthly expenses? What's up with that? I took your 20% of the trust fund to recoup some of it, I told him. Now he was calm and said, I'd spent that money as your boyfriend, so you shouldn't ask for it. By that logic, you gave me the money from the trust fund when you were my boyfriend, so you shouldn't ask for it either, I countered. He threatened to sue me for taking his share. I told him if he did, I would also press charges for card theft, because he used my debit card to withdraw the money for his monthly expenses. I reminded him that if we calculate who owed how much, he could end up in debt, so he'd better watch his tone and accept the truth. He left angrily, his face sour. If this encounter weren't enough, my aunt and Lucia showed up at my parents' house looking for me. They were here to ask me about the trust fund money. Ron had told them I took his share of the money, and now he had nothing. He was ruined. I told them it was none of their business and that I wouldn't discuss my matter with them. Lucia was still pestering me to tell her because her future was at stake. I said, this concept is beyond your understanding, so you'd better stay away from it. My aunt yelled at me for insulting Lucia and said I should lower my ego when talking to Lucia because she's more successful than me, because Ron left me for her. My dad came to my room upon hearing my aunt's voice. My aunt melted at the sight. She said she was casually talking to me about her heartbreak. Dad said he heard everything, and if she dared to raise her voice against me again, he would cut her off from all the financial support he'd been giving her. He said he regretted not interfering in my affairs earlier because they had given my aunt carte blanche to humiliate me, but no more. Dad told her that if Lucia was so successful, then she should help Ron run the house and they would avoid eviction. Apparently, my aunt and Lucia didn't know about Ron's poor financial condition or the default on the rent. They were shocked. Lucia began sobbing in front of my dad, saying that Ron had ruined Lucia's life because he couldn't support her. She was worried about where they would live if the landlord really evicted them. She asked him to release Ron's share of the trust fund so she could rebuild her life. My dad said he was proud of me for standing up for myself and laughed at my aunt for going behind my back and seducing Ron for Lucia. She should have thought about the consequences before prostituting her daughter. My aunt began to cry, saying she did everything to secure her daughter's future. My aunt changes color rapidly depending on the situation. She said, Lucia doesn't have a father who supports her like you, nor is she educated like you to earn money on her own, so she has to take care of her. I thought Ron was the one who could take care of my daughter, but look, the poor fat girl betrayed her and broke this. Lucia said she could have told me Ron was unemployed, but you let your cousin marry a bum, but I don't blame you for that. You have your own reasons for hiding the truth. My dad stood up and asked them to leave. The ones who turned their backs on me to seduce my fiancé, and then came to my house to rub it in my face that her daughter was marrying my fiancé was her. Now that things are falling apart, she's blaming me for hiding the truth from Ron. What the fuck? Well, before they left, I told her, don't worry about Lucia. There are plenty of Ugardadis waiting to shower their love on girls like Lucia. I'm sure you both can find one. That was very mean of me. But I'm not that nice of a person, by the way, nor am I interested in being one with them. She was the one who started the humiliation when she came to tell me about her daughter's wedding. I don't know what happened after that. I wish I had recorded her calling Ron a bum. She deserved to know what her mother-in-law and his wife think of him. However, if she could call him that in front of us, she could do it to his face. Update 3. Ron emailed me admitting how much he had messed things up. He had borrowed money from a friend to pay the back rent, but defaulted again because his client delayed payment for his writing work. The landlord gave him notice to vacate the house. He asked my aunt to allow them to live there for a few months, but my grandparents refused. Ron didn't know the truth, that the house wasn't my aunt's. They lied, saying it was my aunt's house and that my grandparents lived there, when in fact it was the other way around. They're a bunch of liars. Ron mentioned that Lucia also lied about her education and her job, claiming to be a restaurant manager and exaggerating her salary. This led Ron to think they could pursue our business plan together. I'm amazed at how he couldn't see Lucia's lack of intelligence in their dates. Did they really talk, or was it just a casual encounter? She mentioned she was giving up her writing dreams and looking for a job in her previous field. I ignored her first email. A few days later, she sent another, this time apologizing. She expressed regret for betraying me and acknowledged that her life had taken a nosedive. He mentioned how my aunt took Lucia, manipulating her like a puppet, so now he was alone. Lucia probably didn't love Ron. She probably followed her mother's plan to lure him away. It makes me think about the power of beauty. No matter how much we advocate for intelligence, it seems beauty has the upper hand. Even the brightest minds can fall for it. However, I have no desire to forgive Ron or reconcile with him. He's sorry now, but he's a cheater. Once a cheater, always a cheater. His life might be a mess, in part because I liquidated the trust fund, but I don't regret it. I was fair to myself. He made a choice, and now he has to live with it. I responded to his email telling him never to contact me again, and I blocked him. I thought about warning him that my aunt would probably abandon Lucia once she got a better-paying job, but why should I comfort him? He destroyed my soul by cheating on me with my cousin. His misery is nothing more than gossip to me now. I discussed it all with my mom, and we laughed a lot. She said she's satisfied now that karma has caught up with them all. Update 4. Well, life is good, at least much better than when I started writing here. It's been 2 years since everything blew up, and there's a big difference between my life and that of the rest of the people involved. I don't know where to start because this is a bit long, but I'll try to keep it very short, although I don't want to leave any details out. To start, I'll talk about myself. Not because I'm self-centered, but to give a little update for those who asked, and then get to the interesting stuff. I still have my job at Lead and everything's going great. I've even met a guy here who we're dating. As for Ron, he's gotten a job and, according to some friends, is miserable. He keeps complaining that he lost his dream job and has to work at something he doesn't like because of a witch, which would be me. I might be offended, but the truth is, I'm really happy about what's happening to him. Remember, I'm not a nice person. Besides, it's not like he can't work for a while, save up, and then try again. Or work at night doing what he wants to do, while holding down a day job to support himself. But it seems like he's not that committed to his dream job, so-called, because he's not willing to put in the effort. As for my aunt and cousin, the most wonderful thing in the world happened. My grandparents kicked them out. They got tired of all the drama and having them living with them, so they asked them to leave. Now they're both renting together because they have nothing else to do, since they're both kind of useless. If I were them, I'd start looking for a new boyfriend right away. It's not like Lucia is going to get younger and prettier with time. We also know that in her case, intelligence isn't something that's going to improve. Yes, I know I'm very bad, but that's karma. Well, in the end, this wasn't as long as I thought it would be. But at least in general terms, I think I've told you the most important things.